Dunbar Middle School today, Dunbar High School originally, was built in 1929, and it is 1/3 the size of Little Rock Central High School. Dunbar was built to be basically the Black Central. But an interesting note about why Dunbar is the way it is and why it exists is that Dunbar, in many ways, was almost fatally kneecapped before it was even built. In 1926, I really should say, the city of Little Rock had approached the state of Arkansas asking for a grant of money to build a new white high school here in the city. That would eventually become Little Rock Central High School. The state said that that was something they actually were willing to fund the entirety of the cost for, and they gave them a grant of money from a special pot of money that the state legislature had set aside to use to help fund school construction projects throughout the state. And they gave them $1.5 million, which is about $28 million today. So no small chunk of change. But they gave the they gave the school district that money on the condition that it go towards the construction of 2 high schools. One, of course, being Central, the other being what would become Dunbar. The school district, however, had no plans to build a new black high school before they asked for that money, and after they got that money, they really did not want to put a large amount of it into the building of a black high school, if any. Because that was not something they saw as a goal worth advancing. They did not see black education as something that had inherent worth in its own right. Black education was primarily intended to help provide a labor force for white community citizens to be able to find as employees. So providing roles such as masons and street sweepers and nursemaids and things of that nature, as opposed to helping prepare children for the chance to become things such as engineers and physicians and mathematics professors and things of that nature. So already there's that discrepancy that exists, and then on top of that they decide to do something that was technically legal, but as almost anyone would tell you, extremely morally unjust. And they decided to reinterpret what the state had said. They said all the state had said was that the money had to be split between those projects. So they decided to make a split. They put as much money as they possibly could into the building and the construction of Central High School. That was about 98% of the budget. When all was said and done, they left $30,000 that they would turn over to the black community when the black community would ask where their high school was. So Dunbar was almost entirely funded by 3 sources. One was that $30,000, which was not enough to build anything with, really. 2 was a $60,000 grant from the Rosenwald Institute out of Chicago. Julius Rosenwald was a philanthropist who wanted to help construct schools for black communities throughout much of the American South. The Rosenwald Institute had originally agreed to pay the whole cost, but upon realizing just how much that would be, they gave a chunk of money and stepped back. So $90,000 from outside sources, but the rest of the money, which would eventually come to about $310,000 additional dollars, would come straight out of the pockets of the black community here in the city of Little Rock and go towards the construction of Dunbar, which was a point of great pride for the black community, that they had been able to rise to this challenge and that there was now a place for their children to receive an education. Because there were still people alive at that time in 1929 who either knew someone or themselves had gone through a time in which teaching anyone who was a person of color and educating them would have been a crime, because that would mean you were teaching a slave. So the fact that there was now a public high school for black children to receive an education was something that they drew great inspiration and pride from, and justifiably so. But that does not change the underlying basis of the story, which shows just how unjust segregation and so-called separate but equal actually would unfold in practice.